Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby and welcome back to another quick tank review. This time I'm going to be looking at the tier 9 German heavy tank, the E75. Now what do you need to know about this tank? Just quickly, it is a fantastically armoured tank, all round armour, as long as you angle it well. It's got a pretty punchy gun, but quite low DPM. This thing can absolute bully tanks if it can engage them one-on-one. This has got to be one of the strongest tanks tier for tier in the game, and in my opinion it is the highlight of the German heavy tree. So let's take a look at some stats. This tank's got 1,920 hit points, pretty standard. Slightly less than the Conqueror, which is interesting. It weighs an impressive 92.3 tons with my loadout. That means that this thing can't really be rammed by many tanks, and in fact you can be the one who engages the ramming. As an example, a T110E5 weighs just under 55 tons with a full loadout, so if you're able to get a ram off on him, you're going to do some significant damage and he's going to definitely come off worse. Now the speed limit of this tank is quite a healthy 30 kilometers an hour, which means that really this can go a lot quicker than a lot of people give it credit for. This thing can relocate and outmaneuver its enemies at times, especially slower, heavier tier 10 tanks such as the Mouse and the E100 for example. The speed also allows it to have a degree of flexibility when engaging tank destroyers. It can be surprisingly quick because of its very large engine. It's got 1,200 brake horsepower, which gives this a fairly alright horsepower to ton ratio. It's not amazing, but it's not slow. This tank is not slow, and it will get up to its top speed along the flat pretty quickly. Now the tank's traverse speed is quite weak. It's 21 degrees a second, which is actually lower than the E100. It's probably got to be one of the weak points of this tank, considering how much you need to angle the armor. Generally in this tank, the only time that I get penetrated is when I do not have enough time to re-angle the armor to engage a new enemy, or if I'm being engaged by multiple opponents and I need to try and micro-bouncing multiple enemies. Sometimes the traverse speed just isn't quite good enough for you to be able to do that. Now, to highlight the strong point of this tank, the hull armor. It's got 160mm at the front, 120 at the side, 120 at the rear, and the turret is an absolute beast. 252 at the front, 160 at the side, 160 at the rear. I will highlight the weak points of the tank now. The lower plate is quite easy to penetrate from range, as long as you've got, say, about 225mm of penetration plus. This tank can just push around tier 7 heavies and there's basically no chance they're going to be able to penetrate them frontally, even if you almost fail to angle. And remember that when the enemies are close up to you, when they're aiming down on your lower plate, that the angle is going to be even worse. So if you can see the enemy strategically trying to aim at your lower plate, make sure you angle it and make sure that you get up close so you make the angle worse for him. I would suggest angling the front like this. This is about the angle that you want on the E75, considering that the front is 160 and the side is 120. If you see the enemy aiming at your lower plate, you want to exaggerate the angle. And if you see then the enemy aim at your side, you want to bring it back. You need to kind of wiggle and look at where they're aiming, which is quite easy to do between the shots because this tank has got quite a slow reload time. Keep in mind that if you're engaging an E75 frontally and he's remaining stationary, if you can snipe his cupola, you can go into that quite frequently with 200mm of penetration, or even slightly less. I've been penetrated by IS-6s in the cupola, even when they've been sniping me, which has been very annoying. But I have no idea whether they were using the regular 175mm or the APCR with 200 plus. So if you engage an E75 in the side, don't shoot its turret unless that's the only flat thing. You want to shoot the hull roughly about here. If you can catch its front sprocket, then do so and you'll track it and also do damage. But as soon as it starts to angle, chance for a bounce gets higher and higher and higher and higher until it reaches its strongest angle for its armor. If you're playing with an E75 and you get caught from behind, don't turn your tank all the way around and give them a side shot at a tangent. What you want to do is angle your armor, go forwards and backwards, try and get them to shoot you at a 45 degree, hope for a bounce, and then while they're reloading, you can have time to turn all the way around. With this tank, when you're engaging multiple opponents, you really need to gauge who's going to be shooting you next. Try and remember the reloads of each of the tanks and try and angle for each of them and bounce them and bounce them and bounce them. An amateur player will just be hammering his click, not waiting for the penetrating shot, and so you can gauge pretty easily who you need to bounce next. Now the turret traverse speed on this tank is 18, which is rather slow. For example, the E100 has 20 degrees a second on turret traverse, so that really shows you how slow this thing is to turn both its tracks and its turret. Now its camo rating will not be brilliant as it is a very large tank, but it does have 400 meters view range, so it is very capable of spotting enemies at quite long distances. Now to talk about the gun, which is not the strong point of the E75. It's definitely not the weak point, but it's not the strong point. So the caliber is 128mm, it fires 3.82 rounds a minute, with 246mm of penetration with standard ammo, and a fantastic penetration of 311 with APCR. Now its HE ammo has got 65mm of penetration, so don't forget that if the enemy has got very low armor, then there is a chance that you can roll really high and wreck their tank with 630 damage per shot with the HE ammo. Now the regular rounds damage is 490. That's really good alpha. That's like IS-7 alpha, as an example. What this can do is it means that if you can control the engagement, you can often bully tanks such as, let's think, the T-34 or any of the Foshes or the T-110 E5. As their alpha of 400, they don't really want to trade shots with you, especially considering that when angled, your armor is much better than theirs. Engaging at medium to long ranges will be more difficult, however, due to the relatively poor accuracy of the gun of 0.38 and the fairly bad aim time of 2.9. Now many people who come to the E75 obviously have gone through the Tiger II, and that means that they will have likely used the top gun on the Tiger II. Now the top gun on the Tiger II is notorious for very poor DPM, considering it only fires 4.76 rounds a minute with its 320 alpha damage. That's probably the worst thing about this gun, is that the DPM is just so low, and quite often Tiger II drivers will literally not be able to take out all the enemies that are advancing on them, and they will get outflanked. That's because this gun's got really good penetration of 225, really good accuracy, and really low aim time. So remember, when you're stepping up to the E75, your rate of fire does not go down that much. Your alpha significantly increases, your penetration goes up by quite a margin, but your accuracy gets worse and your aim time gets much worse. If you were used to pulling off clutch shots that you could with the top 105, and then also having a hell of a long time to maneuver your tank because of the slow reload on the 105, you're going to have to relearn how to use the 128mm gun. So I hope I've given you an in-depth analysis into the E75, into its functionality. So without further ado, let's see how it performs in some gameplay.
Let's go.
So here we go, we're playing the E75 on Himmelsdorf. As we can see, there are 5 tier 10 enemy tanks on the enemy team, including 2 very dangerous medium players in the platoon. Although this isn't the best matchup for the E75 really loves getting in a good matchup where basically it doesn't have to worry about many tanks penetrating it. In this tank and this matchup, every enemy is a threat. I took an opportunity there to try and penetrate the T-54E1 at the start of the game. Fortunately, our shot went wide. Really, you can't pull off such clutch shots in the E75. But there we managed to hit the 50B, chunking him down for a good percentage of his health. Such is the alpha damage on the E75, even though that was quite a low roll. So we can see on our northwest flank that the E100 is now engaging 2 tier 10 medium tanks. I see an IS-8 doing pretty much nothing in their base. So free damage is free damage. We'll start chunking him down. I don't really fancy the chances of that E100 versus those 2 tier 10 medium tanks. I spot a T-54E1 making a beeline straight down that flank. So I angle my armor, as you can see, and prepare for the shot. We put it straight into him. And now I notice that basically the west flank has been lost. Our artillery is doing completely the right thing and running away from those very dangerous medium tanks. I think they're going to poke this corner, and they do. So I make a shot. We hear the Leopard fires a heat round at me as it makes a sizzle as it hits the tank. I realise that I can't stay there because his friend, the T-62A, who's got a very good rate of fire, great accuracy and great alpha damage, would be able to basically keep me tracked there and take me out of the game, so I had to use my repair pack early. I usually don't like using repair packs on the E75 for tracks, but when you know that there are very good players who are about to just decimate your tank, you have to use it. So I sort of let this T-54E1 go along my northern flank because I thought that their medium tanks were still there. I was more worried about engaging the tier 10 mediums than trying to catch that T-54E1. So now I'm going to come around the corner because I heard the leopard fire. Put another shot into his rather weak armor. We didn't have to aim too much when you're aiming at a leopard 1. All you have to do is hit his tank. And then we side scrape out for another opportunity. His friend bounces off us. And we make a rather nice roll there, 508 to finish off the leopard 1. As we could see there, as I was approaching the T-62A, I was not angling my armor, and so we get penned in the lower plate. That's what you've got to watch out for in the E-75. At this kind of an angle, it's very easy to pen the lower plate in this kind of a game with high tier tanks. So you really have to make sure that you angle your tank like this, otherwise they're going to be able to go through your armor just as we saw. So we lost a bat chat there to a 1390. I put a shot in against the Object 704, and I'm loading a premium round now. This game is rather close, and when you're duking it out with an Object 704, you really want to penetrate your shots, otherwise he's going to chunk you down for nearly half your health. So this game's fairly even at the moment. We're down 2 tanks, but we're definitely still in it. I got spotted there as I side scraped. And I make a bit of a mistake here. I give him a shot on me. I thought that that corner was going to angle more. That was probably the worst thing that I did in the game there. I misjudged the angle. And I was quite lucky that he bounced off me there. That he hit my upper plate and not my lower plate. Otherwise I would have lost a lot of health. I decide that I'm just going to side scrape round this corner and go for it. And I know with the premium round I don't really have to aim at a weak point. I can just aim at a flat surface at the lower plate of the object and it's going to go in. So we're still behind 3 tanks. It's 4 versus 7. There's an E100 here. I've got a nice opportunity on the side of his turret. We make it happen and then we angle our armor. So you might be noticing here that the rate of fire on the E75 is not fantastic, but it's definitely not bad. It's not terrible. It definitely gives you enough time to refocus on what is happening on the map between your shots and to angle your tank and think about where the next engagement should be. So we're still down by 3 tanks, and I can notice that there's an E75 here beasting our friends. I got spotted there. There are lots of enemy tanks who have not been spotted, so I went into the corner just in case I was going to take a lot of fire from the middle. Fortunately, we did not get hit a lot. And our 50B just had a really good game against this E75. The E75 must have been focusing on the Batchat, who just got shut down hard by our AMX 50B. I've loaded a regular round here to take out the E75. Don't want to waste those premium shells right now. And unfortunately the 50B gets hit in the back, so I go to cover him. I want to win this game, I need to take the shots for him. And then I make another misjudgment here. I really did not think that E100 was going to be able to snipe down and hit my cupola from above, as you guys saw. You can see the penetration mark on top of the tank. Crazy angling there by the E100. And the 50B does a great job shutting down the enemy 50B from coming from behind. And I try and look after our front flank. And he gets the triple kill with 1 clip. Me and that E50, sorry, the AMX 50B, just absolutely put this game completely back in the balance. And then, oh my god, what the hell? I did not expect that. A GW Tiger had gone up the hill, come down to go TD mode. I definitely did not expect that. And I ended up getting quite lucky to not be taken out of the game there, if I'm very honest. So right now you guys can't see it because I cover up the chat. But I'm telling the AMX 50B to go cap. I told him once, go cap in capitals. It's obvious that the E100 is going to have to come down. I'm telling the 50B that it's time for him to cap. We know the E100 is got 2,339 health left. Now I ping the map to try and tell him what he should do, which is to go and cap. And wow, my sixth sense went off there. What? I was going, what? Okay, that means the E100 must be up there. So he knows where I am, but he doesn't know yet where the 50B is. And there you go, the E100 rolled down the slope at a very fast pace, and he hits the 50B for most of his health. I tell the 50B again, go cap 3 times in capitals again. And then now what I do is I think I have to look down both alleyways. But fortunately, the 50B spots the E100, so I get another tell about what his movements will be. I saw just before he re-stealthed that he was looking like he was moving down the B line. So I'm going to angle my armor and prepare. I think that the 50B is just going to roll into the cap. And the E100 is going to roll into the cap in front of me. I clutch shot the E100, angle my armor, and we get a bounce. I track him, want to keep him in place, and I hide behind the 50B while I reload. I'm just trying to stall the game out here. I really don't think I'm going to be able to take out this E100 all by myself. We bounce another shell. So now this is a bit of a dance of death. I pull back to get another penetrating shot. And unfortunately now I fired my last APCR shell. So now with 246mm of penetration, it's a lot harder to engage the E100. When you start a one-on-one duel against an E100 who has most of his life left, and you've only got 1 shot left in you, he should have just fired an HE shell from the beginning. He should never have bounced off me 3 times. Fortunately for me, I was able to stall him for long enough for the 50B to get into the cap, and that's all she wrote. What a fantastic result to be able to stall the game there and allow our AMX 50B to cap. It's unfortunate that he didn't listen to me for the first 3 or 4 times that I said it. He should have just accepted what the best game plan was and gone off to go cap. 50B versus an E100 with 2,300 health is really not a very fair duel. But anyway, let's take a look at some post-game stats. So, wow, what a result. We were able to get 4,650 experience for our double. That's the single biggest experience I've ever got in an E75 game, and it was just fantastic really for being against so many high tier tanks and still being able to have a bit of a monster round in the E75. We can see that we got a sniper medal because we hit 16 out of 17 shots. It was only the first shot of the game that we missed, trying to fire clutch at the T54E1. And of the 16 that hits, all 16 penetrated. We hit 10 of the enemy team, doing over 7,000 damage, 7,118 damage. That's a bit of a beast game in the E75. And look at the potential damage that we received before we died, 6,240. It was only when I made the mistake at the end versus the E100 that really we lost all of our health very quickly. For that, we were really in a good position. We controlled most of the engagements. Apart from the mistake I made against the object, I angled my tank well, and I took the opportunities when they came to do as much damage to the enemy team as I could. Considering what the E75 is capable of doing in these kind of tier 10 games, you guys can instantly see why this is an absolute joy to play. The armor on this tank is fantastic, the mobility isn't bad, The gun it's definitely usable, but the armor is just simply incredible. If you angle well, try and control the engagement, really, there's not many tanks in the game that can successfully go 1 versus 1 with you. I absolutely adore the E75, which is why you can see that I've got a 4 skill crew in this tank. This is still my kind of go-to tank when things are going wrong. Okay, everything's going wrong. What am I going to do? Okay, I'll play in the E75. One thing that many people do is they get the E75 and all they're thinking is, I want to get the E100, I want to get the E100, I want to get the E100. And some people play through the E75 without even getting the top engine. Without the top engine, this thing is slow as. You have to get this tank fully upgraded, because frankly, in my opinion, when you get to the E100 and you get past the whole, woohoo, I've got a tier 10 tank, woohoo, I can do 750 alpha damage, and I've got 2,600 health, or 2,800 health, whatever the E100 has. Then after that, you realize that you're kind of a big tank with a lot of health and a high alpha damage, but really, your kind of frontal armor is not fantastic. The flexibility to angle with the E75 tier for tier is much better than the E100. When the E75 meets those tier 7 tanks, there's absolutely nothing that they can do against it. Whereas in my opinion with the E100 has a lot more difficulty engaging tier 8 tanks than the E75 does engaging tier 7 tanks. So if you guys want more replays where I play the E75, there are tons of videos, especially take a look at my teamwork series. It seems like that whenever I play the E75 that really the team is gonna have a really good game. I think it's just the last 2 teamwork videos that I put up both got the 75 featured in, so why don't you check them out? So if you've enjoyed this review or it's helped you out, please consider rating it down below. I'd really appreciate it. And why don't you leave me a comment below and tell me what you think about the 75? Do you think it's the powerhouse that I think it is? Is it one of your keeper tanks? Or do you think it's not as good as I'm making it out to be in the review, if you don't know how to angle the armor, for example? Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.